A Step Back in Time. For this part in the series, we're going to be reading from Waynesboro in Civil War Days by Matilda Ripple Detrich. This book can be found in our PA room here at the library. March 13th, 1923. In Civil War days, Waynesboro was a town with less than 1,500 people. Today, 1923, there are more than 200 children enrolled in our public schools. There were 4 churches: Reformed, Methodist, Roman Catholic, and Union, which was Lutheran and Presbyterian. There was no priest here, and it was seldom one came to conduct a service. But the Reformed Methodist and Lutheran congregations had resident pastors, while the Presbyterians were served by the pastor living in Greencastle. The public school children were housed in 2 buildings. The Eastern Schoolhouse was a stone building which stood where Middle Street and Cottage Street now meet. There was a wooden stile over which one had to climb in order to enter or leave the schoolyard. Nearby were Hamilton's board piles, which the children seemed an ideal playground. Mrs. Nepper and Professor Budd were the teachers there. The Western Schoolhouse was of brick and stood back on Main Street, where Dr. P.D. Hoover's residence now is. There were 3 teachers there: Mr. Joseph Stoner, who had taught there for many years and who was noted for his strict discipline, and Mrs. Samantha French and Miss Anna McCaffrey, who were young women with progressive ideas. The Western Schoolhouse was also the voting place for residents of both town and township, and on election day the schoolyard was often the scene of a riotous behavior. There were times when women kept close to their homes on election days on account of the drunkenness, the driving mad, and the wild shooting on the streets. In contrast with the stormiest election days was the May Day celebration. Ms. Samantha chose a May Queen from among her girls, and on the first day of May, the Queen, attended by her 2 maids of honor, were followed by other girls of the school with their teachers, friends, and they all marched in procession from the Western Schoolhouse. The girls, with their fresh white dresses and with wreaths on their head, made an attractive picture as they passed down the street and out Mechanics Street to Lesher Woods. There on a flower-covered throne, the Queen was crowned with great ceremony. On one of these occasions, E.A. Herring made such a pleasing coronation address, the following letter was sent to him. May 26th, Waynesboro, 1860. Dr. E.A. Herring, Sir, my pupils and friends join me in earnestly soliciting a copy of your very eloquent coronation address for publication, hoping you will contribute to happiness by a compliance with this request. I remain, yours most respectfully, Samantha A. French. The doctor replied as follows. Waynesboro, May 26, 1860. Miss Samantha A. French, your flattering note of this evening requested a copy of the address which I had the honor to deliver at the May party for publication is before me. In reply, permit me to say that however much I dislike its publication, I cannot allow myself to be so ungallant as to refuse compliance with a request which would in the least degree contribute to the happiness of the fair sex. Most respectfully yours, E.A. Herring. Dr. Herring was very popular, especially with the young people, but when at the beginning of the war they learned that he sympathized with the South, some of them decided they ought to show their disapproval. One day, as a group of girls were on their way to school, they saw him coming toward them and agreed that this was their opportunity. So as he came closer, instead of their usual friendly greeting, they all frowned up. Of course, he did not understand and asked, "What's the matter, girls? What's wrong?" To which their spokesman replied, "Frown on the first attempt to sever the Union." All he could say as he passed on was tut, tut. Girls, tut, tut, tut. And so ended their attempt to reprove their friend. But all of this was in the early days. Soon the war spirit grew stronger. Miss Samantha left her school and went away to be a telegraph operator. The happy May Day celebrations were no longer held, and some of the girls who had marched in the processions were busy scraping lint for hospitals. The public schools were not the only school in town. Each year there were summer schools, which the pupils paid to attend, and which were taught by one or more of the public school teachers. Then, too, there were more pretentious schools. In 1862, Mr. A. Leachilder, A.B., opened a school, it's quite the name, for males and females in the room known as the Waynesboro Academy. He had a session of 11 weeks and taught the Common English branches for $2.50. The Higher English, $3.50. Latin and Greek with the others for $1.50. And bookkeeping taught gratuity. His course of study was to be full and thorough, the government mild, but first a literary society was to be held in connection with the school, with the object was to improve the mind morally and intellectually. J.F. Bould's school in the Eastern Schoolhouse for male and females, terms moderate with no deducting for lost time except in case of sickness of pupils. For a short time, Miss Prill had a school for ladies in the basement of the Lutheran parsonage, but the select school which seems to be remembered best was the Waynesboro Classical and Commercial Institute, which was first in the Waynesboro Academy, but in the spring of 1862 was moved to the town hall, now the post office. According to their advertisement, this institute affords advantages unequaled in other schools in this section of the state. It provides a regular classical and scientific course or a thorough practical commercial education, including double entry and keeping and practicing ornamental penmanship, pen drawing, and students admitted at any time. Later, a musical department under Professor Budd was included, and the school was open 5 nights a week for males and females. But in 1863, Professor Barnitz went to war, and after a time the school was taken over by Professor Overfield, who had taken over for Professor Barnitz. It did not continue long after that. Before one of the public exhibitions held in the town hall, it was announced that the services of Constables Cooper, Bonebreak, and Krause had been secured to keep order. The exhibition required 2 evenings, July 4th and 5th. There was a very general turnout for the citizens, the hall being filled both evenings. The young ladies particularly bore themselves very becomingly and presented a very handsome appearance on the elevated and capacious stage. So that is where we're going to leave off for today. Next week we are going to be discussing, some other things that the schools had for entertainment and instruction, and moving into the Waynesboro Village Record. So a lot to learn next time on our show, A Step Back in Time. Thanks for listening. Again, we're reading Waynesboro in Civil War Days by Matilda Ripple Detrich. Have a lovely day.